How to deal with the opinion that the Catholic Church is a pedophile organization. I'm just really upset right now after hearing someone say this, and I wanted to know how to deal with it. I'm so sorry if this is taboo. I'm just really scared right now. I'm a recent convert to the church, and I've been having these conversations with those in my family who are really opposed to my conversion. This is the accusation they level against my faith, and I have no idea how to defend it. What can I say to stand up for my decision to become and remain Catholic amid all of the priest scandals? May God be with you.
Today's conversation is one of those uncomfortable conversations. And I feel like it's one of those conversations that we just have to have. And if you've been anyone who has been Catholic for any amount of time, this is something that comes up often in conversation. This is something that's often probably leveled against you. If you have family members who are Protestant, friends who are atheist, or anything in between, the question of how can you be and remain Catholic knowing what has happened throughout the church, particularly when it comes to priests and the abuse of children and the entire scandals that have happened over the years. So I want to talk about that today and just pull the band-aid off and hopefully give those of you who are struggling with this, those of you who don't really have an explanation, those of you who may be thinking about conversion, and this is like one of those one things that you can't seem to get over, and you wonder how the heck can all of these billions of people on the planet, who are millions of which are Catholic, how do you go on? I want to go ahead and I want to just get into I want to lay some groundwork because we're going to get into a lot of stuff today. I want to show you some statistics, some surprising statistics about S abuse that's happening outside of the church that a lot of people are not talking about. I want to talk about S abuse that's happening also in the Protestant church. And here's the thing, we don't want to get into this thing about like whataboutisms because I think that does not help the conversation. But for those of you who need a fuller context about this specific issue and knowing how the media is just piling onto the church and piling onto, of course, Catholicism, it just makes it a really hard conversation to have, to see that, dudes, you have a larger problem on your hands that you also need to talk about. Someone says to you, how can you remain in the church? This is one of the things I want you to say. Number one, as Catholics, we do not condone the atrocities. We acknowledge them and their evil and horror, but we also acknowledge that the sins of these individuals are not our own. And I think that is so crucial in this. Think about this. As a Catholic, and just as a Christian in general, if you're watching this and you're not Catholic and whatever, think about this. Of all the sins that happen to various people around the world, whether someone commits murder or theft or something, some sort of atrocity, and they are the same faith as you, it's not your responsibility to take on their sin. And you're not also like in the process of all of this condoning what has happened or supporting it by staying Christian, by remaining within your faith. But you have to realize that the sins of someone else are not the sins of your own. So for me, when I'm bringing up these 4 points, these are kind of the things for me that I say are important in this process for me to say, okay, how can I stay here? How can I remain here? Number one, they're not my sins. And I think what has happened in the church is absolutely atrocious, absolutely disgusting. It should never have happened. But at the same time, I can acknowledge point number two that I'm going to bring up, and that is this, because what people will say, all right, so you want to say you don't condone it, but can you admit that the Catholic Church hides Pedos, right? It is a pedo organization. Here's what I say that you need to say about that. Number two, the Catholic Church isn't an organization of pedos. Instead, it is the Church of Christ that has been infiltrated by those who wish to destroy it. But what we must always remember as Catholics is that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, that the gates of hell will never prevail against his church. That's it. At the end of the day, guys, all of this stuff that has been happening in the church, all the things that are in the media, yeah, we can admit it's absolutely positively disgusting. It should never have happened. But do you think that any of this stuff didn't happen by design? Since the time of Christ's resurrection, they have been trying to destroy what he has put together. So, of course, you're going to have people who come in who are going to do the most disgusting, undermining things to destroy Christ's church. But they'll never be able to succeed because there's no way that he will allow that. Think about this 2,000 years. And over the last couple of decades, this escalation about these pedos and these wayward criminals who have infiltrated the church has really come to a head. And even at the end of the day, the church still stands. If you think about it in any kind of logic, right, this should have destroyed everything about our faith. It should have completely destroyed everything. But that's not what happened. So you have to understand that at the end of the day, people are going to do what they're going to do, and that these priests came in and they abused their power, they deceived their flock, and they took advantage of the most vulnerable. But they do not represent God. They do not represent the faith. They do not represent anything of what Jesus Christ was ever about. And the one thing that we're going to always know is that there are going to be sinners among us. There are going to be sinners among us, period, point blank, the end. But you don't leave, you don't defect, you don't give up simply because other people are trying to destroy what Christ has put together. Nothing that Jesus Christ has put together can ever be destroyed by man, ever. So I'm really passionate about this because I have had an opportunity to really just sit with this. I told you guys that for me, I did have a moment where I questioned my faith as far as whether or not Catholicism is what I needed to be doing, whether this is a religion that I could place my whole entire belief system on. The entire world has tried to tell me, they have tried to tell you, I'm pretty sure, that Catholicism is not the way, that this is the way of the devil, that this is the white man's religion, that this is not what God or Jesus or anyone, God is Jesus, Jesus is God, but this is not what he intended for us, that the church and its traditions are evil. None of that is true. None of that is true. And I had to go back and I had to discover this. I had to sit and ask myself the hard questions. And I want this conversation to challenge you to do the same. If you aren't asking questions, if you aren't going back and making yourself think about the hard things in faith that you might have trouble with, you're not on a real faith journey because nothing about faith and belief is easy. Nothing about faith and belief is going to be just spoon fed to you and then you don't have to struggle with it. You've got to be able to defend it because we are the church militant here on earth. You've got to be able to defend it, particularly in today's time where they are trying to destroy everything we believe, everything we stand for, and they will not stop until they do it, including those who have infiltrated the priesthood and have taken advantage of our children and our sisters, our religious sisters, and the laity and the congregations. We cannot stand for it. And you know what? I'm thankful that it all came out. And the sad part is, yes, it goes all the way to the top of the food chain, and every single one of them needs to be exposed. Absolutely. And you can stand by that, and you can admit that, and you can say that as someone who stands 10 toes down for Christ. This should not have happened. This should not have been condoned. This should not have been covered up. This should have been exposed because the man that died on a cross did not want any of this for any of us. And it is okay for you to admit that. Do not run from it. Stand up to the truth, face the truth, put it at the foot of the cross, and you keep going with your faith.